All right, welcome to the Nathaneal Podcast. Today, we have one of the best copywriters that I know on X, Andrew Gould. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, Nathaniel. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's our second conversation now. We had a space before, which was really great. I just needed to hop on with you again because really you have like an in-depth knowledge. So to people who don't know, you've been a freelance copywriter since 2009. And you are a sales page and VSL specialist, copywriter specialist. Yeah. So to anyone who is like interested in copywriting, I do want to know your background. How'd you get into copywriting? What's your how'd you get into this place?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I first discovered copywriting kind of martial arts magazines. I used to read these long adverts for things, like the Chinese death touch and Russian leg locks. And I thought, these are amazing. These are amazing. I think these are fascinating. They're better than the articles. So I'd read these over and over again. And then I went to university, this had been in the late 90s or so. And then I discovered online that these were called Dan Kennedy style adverts. So I looked up Dan Kennedy. And on his website, it said, give me your email address and I'll give you a free 12-part course on copywriting. So I did it. I gave him my email address. I got this 12-part course on copywriting and it still fascinated me. The idea that you can sell with words, that you can measure it and be very specific and know exactly what works and what doesn't work. I thought, wow, this is great. But, I was doing a degree in accounting at the time. And I mean, I know I look like the typical accountant and... So I put it to one side, I finished my degree, and I didn't really like my degree, to be honest. Accounting is incredibly boring. So I ended up just working a series of entry-level jobs, I've cleaned toilets, I've pushed, mail through people's doors, I worked on building sites, stacked shelves, worked on a till in a supermarket, did just about anything. And then I got a job in sales. There was a new shop opened up, and I got a job in sales selling cameras. And it turned out it was something I was pretty good at because I found all I had to do was literally walking up to people, find out what they want, and then show them which camera will give them what they want. And I quickly became, the top salesman in the branch. And I thought, this is all right. But then fast forward a few years later, and we're in kind of 2008, the financial crash hits. And as well as that, of course, 2008, people are starting to use the phones now to take pictures rather than cameras. So the market wasn't good for us. As a result, I lost my job. And I thought back to that copywriting thing. It still fascinates me. I still love reading those long adverts. And I remember that Dan Kennedy course. He said that copywriting was salesmanship in print. I was like, well, I've just been pretty good at selling for a few years. So why not give this copywriting thing a go? Why not try it as a freelancer? And so I did. I thought, what's the worst that can happen? Try it for a couple of years. I can always just move back to my boring entry-level jobs if I have to. And it took off 15 years later. Here I am.
That's a great story. So it's like you've been in the copywriting scene for quite a while. It was just reignited when you got the financial crisis, correct?
Yeah, like I was aware of it. I knew, the names of the big players in it. I read the copy. Right. So yeah, it wasn't something I suddenly discovered and then thought, oh, let's jump on this. No, it was something that was kind of always there in the back of my mind.
Gotcha. Do you think this is a question out of nowhere? But do you think you have like a natural salesman vibe, or did you learn sales?
I mean, I was shy. I mean, growing up, I was scared of my own shadow. On there, maybe even 5 years ago, there's no way I would have agreed to do this interview. Not the slightest chance I'd have wanted to talk to a complete stranger halfway across the world while being on video. It wouldn't have happened. So, no, I don't think I was. And now I was probably about the furthest you could get from a natural salesman.
I see. So what do you think made you, because you said you were top salesman in the camera place. What do you think made you the best salesman there?
I think I just understood the process for sales. Basically, that selling is essentially finding out what someone wants and then showing them how what you've got can deliver it. And that's all I did. I'd never try to push something on somebody. It was always, clearly listen to them, ask them, and get clear on what they want. And then when I know exactly what they want, I can show them what I've got that will help them. I think when you do that to people, when people see that you're making an effort to understand them, and then they're much more likely to buy off you than if you just hey, look at this latest camera. It does this, it does that, it does whatever. People like to be understood, and that was all I did. So, there were plenty of people who are better talkers than me who could do, great patter, great sales pitch. I'm stumbling over my words here. So, you can imagine talking to a complete stranger. I'm not great at that. But, the idea that I just ask you a few questions and then show you what I think you need, it worked for me.
Right. And so I'm curious then, because copywriting is quite what you mentioned there, where you are just talking one-sidedly. Like you're basically, you can't listen to the prospect. So how do you approach that in a way that like still feels like your prospect is being listened to?
It's still more or less the same process. It's just almost the time frame's different. Whereas, like you said, in sales, it's a conversation. So I'm going back and forth with the person. And obviously I can't do that in copy. So what we're doing instead is we're kind of asking the questions in advance. We're doing research. We're understanding who the target market is. I'm understanding what do they want, what don't they want, and all that type of thing in advance. And then writing the copy. So it's really the same thing, just the order's a little different.
Right. So you kind of anticipate the objections first and then answer them.
Yeah. That's it. You're anticipating everything about what do they desire? What do they want to move towards? What do they want to move away from? What objections do they have? What language will they use? All the various elements like that. I mean, you can go incredibly deep into that. I mean, when starting out, I normally just recommend people focus on the 4 elements: what people want, what they don't want, objections, and language. But you can go very deep into that. You can start talking about, what do they need to believe in order to buy? What are their suspicions about the industry? How old are they? What relationships are they in? Where are they located in the world? What job have they got? There's all sorts of things you can dive down into. And so you build this detailed picture of who you're selling to so you can better talk to them and better connect with them and what they want. Right.
So really, I think that's number one as well for any copywriters. And I'd like to hear your take on this. Like, do you think the number one would be market research and really understanding who that person is that you're talking to?
Yeah. Research is the key to great copy. Everything else is built on your research. So like I said, you want to know who you're selling to. And that's, again, that might be the single key. The better you know who you're selling to, the better you'll be able to sell to them.
Right.
But then,
do you have like sorry, go ahead. If you're...
Oh no, you can continue.
Like, do you have a step-by-step process on how you research for example, like a product you're going to launch something?
Yeah, we could spend the hours talking about this. On the high level overview of this, it's like the very first thing I'm going to do is, let's say this was actually a client meeting and I just agreed to write some copy for you. And then when we'd finished this call, the very next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hop on YouTube and I'm just going to search whatever area it is we're selling in. So let's say you're selling something about, I don't know, weight loss. Keep it something simple. Then I'm just going to go on YouTube, type in weight loss. If it's something more specific, like maybe weight loss for men over 50, I'll type in something like that. And then to start with, I'll just watch the videos. I mean, I don't really watch the videos. I normally put a game on, play it, and listen to the videos in the background, just so I start to get a feeling for the market. Right. I'm not looking for anything specific at this point. I'm just starting to get immersed in the market. And then once I've done that for the rest of the day, or whatever, then start on the next day, then I'll dive more in depth. And that's where I'll start going through the prospect research. I'll start to create, my avatar, or what people now seem to call the ICP. I mean, when I first started saying ICP online, I thought they meant the Insane Clown Posse, the band. But it turns out they don't mean that.
Right.
You see? So then from there, I'll start to put together, what's the name of the ideal prospect? Are they like a John Smith, a Sarah Jones, anything like that? I just want the name of that because it helps, again, make them more real. on there.
Yeah.
And then I'll go and find a picture of them. I just use Google Images to try and find a picture of what I think they look like. Again, it doesn't matter if you're too accurate on here or not, but the idea of that is you want to get a picture so you can print that picture off and you can attach it, to the bottom or the side of your monitor. And then when you're writing your copy, you're writing directly to that person. So it's almost like you're having that sales conversation with them.
Right.
So, and then I want to know their age. How old are they? Because that matters with both what they're going to want and what sort of references you can make to them. For example, if you made references to me, then you'd want things like the Game Boy launching, playing Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat and talking about them in the playground. Whereas you look at someone a generation younger and he might be Pokemon or Dragon Ball Z or something like that.
Right.
And then I want to know relationship, are they single? Are they married? And that matters because, if somebody's single, then typically one of the main driving forces in anything they buy will be status. Whereas if they're married, then security. They want to keep what they've got, keep their family. That becomes more important. And then I want to know their location. Whereabouts are they in the world? Now, this has possibly become less important with the internet when your market can be all over the place. I mean, we're in two completely different continents here chatting to each other. But I think it's still good to know because let's say if all of your audience are located in Australia, then there's a certain way, they have a certain way of using their English language. They butcher it, obviously, because they're foreigners. But they talk it differently to how I would talk if I was talking to a British audience or an American audience. And then from there, I want to know, their job and what sort of salary do they earn. Because, again, that changes slightly how I talk to them. For anybody on kind of a lower wage, then the framing you often want to give is, it's not your fault. Whatever situation you're in, it's not your fault. And then you can explain to them why it's not their fault, who's to blame, and how they can get out of it. Whereas if someone's like a high performer, maybe they're a lawyer, business owner, they're earning a lot of money, that tends to not be quite as effective. And instead of that, you want to focus on framing it as you deserve this. Because, that person will typically have got to where they are on the, they've put the work in and they've got to where they are and they believe they're successful because of what they've done.
Yeah.
And so you can frame it as, you deserve this.
That's funny.
And then next, you got me started on this one now. We're
Go
going to
ahead.
do a podcast talking about prospect research. And then kind of next, I want to know their desires. In other words, what do they want? What do they want to move towards? And I want to know that both in general in life and specifically, specifically related to the topic. So if it's weight loss, what do they want about weight loss? What exactly are they moving towards? Do they just want to lose a few pounds? Or, do they want to look like, Arnold Schwarzenegger or something? What do they want? And then I want to know the flip side of that. What fears have they got? In other words, what do they want to move away from? Okay, maybe they're embarrassed of seeing themselves in a mirror. Anything like that, what do they want to move away from? And then, again, their objections. Because no matter what you sell, you've almost always got reasons why people won't buy. And so it's good to be aware of those. So you can start, listing those and counter those in your copy before they come up there. I mean, the common objections are things like, oh, it's too expensive, it won't work for me. But you'll also have, niche-specific objections there. And then you also want to know what language do they use. And this is an important one. I think it's often overlooked by beginners because your language can tell straight away whether it can show straight away whether you know what you're talking about or not. For example, I could say, someone could say to me, hey, Andrew, I can get you more customers. But I don't get customers. I'm a service professional. I get clients. So, as soon as that small shift in word there has shown me this person doesn't really understand the market. And it won't get you a client, it won't get you sales using the right language, but using the wrong language is an instant turn-off. So you do need to make sure you're using the right language. And then you want to be aware of other options. So what else are there? Because again, whatever you're selling is not the only thing on the market that can do what you say it can. And now, if you're working for a client, some of them will insist it is, but that's seldom the case. There are almost always other options. And if there's not, in the unlikely event they've got something that is genuinely brand new, then the other option is always the buyer does nothing. He doesn't buy. That's always
Yeah.
the dangerous option on there. So yeah, those are some of the things you want to look at for prospect research. And I won't go on much more of that, or we'll end up spending the entire call just on this one thing. Whereas, we have obviously got other areas of research we need to look at as well. So once you know who you're selling to, the next thing you want to know is, what are you selling? You've got to dive into what you're actually selling. And again, this is something it seems like people don't do that much anymore. It's almost like it's an afterthought. Whereas you really want to focus on, because the better you know what you're selling, again, the better you can sell it. So you want to know things like, what are the benefits has it got? What are the features it's got? Because, features get put down quite a lot, I think, on social media. Everyone's saying benefits, not features. You don't want to use features. But you do. For certain things, you absolutely need to. For example, I bought a new computer. It's like, I wanted to know how much memory it had in. You can't just tell me the benefits. Like this will let you use Word and Photoshop at the same time. Yeah, that's cool. How much memory has it got? Or this will let you play the latest games. No, how much memory has it got? You want to know these features, so you need to know those. Again, you need to know what makes it unique. You need to know what the guarantee is, what the price is. As well as that, you need to know the story behind it and the story of the person who came up with it. And ideally, the history of the idea behind it. You want to know all these nerdy little details, because they can help write much more interesting copy. For example, let's say, you're selling a waterproof wallet. Now, you might have a long list of benefits, features, you might know how it works and all this. But then you ask about the story behind it, and the product owner says, oh, well, I was diving off the coast of Australia and I came face to face with a great white shark. And now you're like, whoa, now we've got something interesting. It's like, here's a great story we can use to sell. Forget all these benefits and features. We've got an amazing story about a shark. So it's always good to know the story behind it.
Right.
So yeah, you want to know first who you're selling to. Next, you want to know what you're selling. And then third, you want to know your competition. Because again, as I just said, you won't be the only person selling something like it. And it's no good pretending you are, because other options exist and your audience knows about them. So you need to too. So again, you want to look at your competition and then see how they're selling their offer and what they're selling. Now, I find it's quite good to make a table or a grid. You can use a spreadsheet or just create a table in your Google Docs, as I do. And then kind of down the side of that table, you put all the different elements of the sales page. What's the headline? What are the promises they're making? What are the deliverables they get? What's the bonus? What's the price? What's the guarantee? What proof they're using? And so on. And then along the top of the table, you can put the names of each of your competitors. And then when you fill that table in, now you've got an instant overview of the market. You can see what headlines everyone's using, what promises, what guarantees, what proof have they got. And then you can start to look for gaps, because you don't want to say exactly the same thing as everyone else. And doing that research will let you look for a gap and say, I can slot in there and be something different. And then, in addition to this, the fourth area of research that I like to look at. Sorry, I don't know if I'm going overkill here with everyone.
No, it's fine. I'm enjoying this. I think a lot of people will enjoy it as well. Go ahead.
And fourth area you want to look at is the market in general. You want to get an idea of what's going on. What are the big stories? What's hot, what's not, what's trending. What's trending, because it's like you can't, like last year, if you were talking about cryptocurrencies, you had to talk about NFTs because they were absolutely red hot. But now, if you try to sell an NFT or anything, no, yeah, exactly. No one's interested. It's becoming negative.
I don't even know what it is. I missed on it.
No, I think it stands for non-fungible token, and it's like people were sharing like JPEGs of monkeys or something. And apparently, they're worth money, and I don't know.
But I think it's like Pokemon cards.
Yeah,
Something
exactly
like
that type of thing. Where, people insist they're valuable, but I'm not really sure anyone really knows how it works. So and then again, you want to know what's popular, what's liked in the market, and what's not liked. And again, the markets go through trends. You don't want to push something that's unpopular. And as well as that, it's also good to know what's in the news in general. Current events are a powerful way if you can link whatever you're selling to a current event on there. Although, that is something you do need to be careful of. For example, a few years ago, I wrote a superhero promotion for a client. and I need to find the letter. I actually got a cease and desist letter from Marvel, basically saying, stop doing this. And I didn't think
Oh,
we'd
really?
infringed any copyright at all. We'd not used any of their named characters or anything. But
Yeah.
I got the letter, and I had to tell the client, we need to do something about this. And he's like, oh, it's fine. I'm like, no, it's fine if you're getting the letter. If I'm getting the letter, it's not fine at all. I'm not being sued by some billion-dollar international corporation. You can get sued. I'm not. So, yeah, and the final element of research I like to look at are the past promotions. In other words, what's the business already done? Because unless they're brand new, the chances are they've already ran promotions, they've already done marketing. So you want to know what they've done and what's worked for them and what's not worked. Because, if, let's say, they've ran 10 promotions that were all stories, there are strong stories in it, and none of them worked, stories aren't resonating with their market. And so you want to go a different approach. And similarly, you also want to know what did work. If they ran a lot of big promise promotions, where they just focused on the benefits and they worked really well for them, then that's the route you've got to take. And yeah, there is more we can dig down into research, but for any newer copywriter, if you get all of those areas, down, then you can't go far wrong with that.
That's masterclass right there. 20-minute masterclass. I do want to ask you more about what you mentioned. Like, I want to talk about the Marvel that you mentioned. What was that about? Why did they give you that letter?
I think Marvel tried to trademark the term superhero or something.
Oh,
and it's obviously it's a silly lawsuit. I mean, it's a silly. I don't think they can possibly do it. But these firms, because I think they're owned by Disney, who are well known for being for being very sue happy, lawsuit friendly, or lawsuit happy, whatever. And so yeah, it might just have been a matter of course. They see someone's doing something with superhero, you get a letter automatically.
Wow.
Yeah, it is slightly worrying, opening the mail, you're going through, like bill for £20, yeah, I can pay that. Oh, I've got to make a dentist appointment, yeah, oh, Marvel, stop this or we'll take you to court. Oh, God.
Right. So speaking of clients, though, I did want to ask you this. Is there any like copywriting thing that you did, like a copywriting freelance thing that you did that was very challenging for you?
Yeah, kind of. Most of the work when I started off was challenging because you're just starting out and you don't know how things work and you don't understand clients, you don't understand yourself and you don't understand the work. So yes, it was like the very first job I did. All I did was follow kind of the exact system I'd been taught and it went well. It went surprisingly well, or at least I thought it did. When I gave the copy to the client, he said he liked it, and I never heard back from him. So who knows? It probably bombed, but I'll never know. But then, kind of the second project I did, that went fairly well as well. And I think I started to get a bit confident, probably a bit arrogant, to think, hey, I'm an amazing copywriter now. I'm the next Gary Halbert. I'm the king. And then the third project, oh man, it couldn't have gone any worse. I spent about 3 months on it and was paid a total of $200 US. So I could have made more doing any other job than that. But the client was always like, "Oh, it's nearly ready to launch, and let's work on these bits. It's out next week." But then next week was week after week after week, and like an idiot, I believed him, and I stuck with him. I thought this is going to be a big opportunity, so let's stay with him. And it wasn't. I thought it was a bad offer, but I thought, I'm an amazing copywriter. I've written 2 sales pages. I can sell it. But, it turned out I couldn't. No one wanted it. And the guy basically paid me $200 out of pity. I don't think that even covered the sales we made from it. It was about internet addiction. Right. And I think maybe now that could work if you pitched it, maybe a social media addiction, that type of thing. But yeah, back then, nobody really cared. And I can't remember how I sold it, but I probably sold it badly as well.
So like back then when you were a beginner, you were only getting paid off of the sales commission, or how did you do that? Because you mentioned like you only got paid $200.
Well, the very first job I did, I asked the gentleman for $100. I wanted to be paid for that up front, and he did that fine. Now, the second job I did, the client said, instead of paying you up front, I'll pay you 50% of the commission, 50% of the sales. Well,
Right.
50%. And I thought, yeah, that sounded pretty amazing. And now, of course, if someone said, I'll pay you 50%, I'm thinking, hang on, 50%, that's a lot of money. No sane business person is giving their copywriter 50%. That should have been an instant red flag. But I didn't know better. So I said, yeah, I'll take the 50%. And we wrote the sales letter, and it did well. It made $6,000 in a couple of weeks. So, and he actually paid me. I got the notification on my PayPal. He sent me $3,000 for this sales page I'd written in 1 week. And I was like, wow. I'd gone from, like I said, cleaning toilets to being paid $3,000 for 1 week's
to
work.
write something.
Yeah, when all I'd done was literally just sit here, typing on the computer. And I thought, wow, I can do this. And then for that next job, it was the same client. And we had there was another partner involved. So because of that, I was getting a 20% cut this time. But I thought, there's another man involved. We've got a bigger audience. It's going to sell more. I'm going to make more money.
Yeah.
And no, I think we probably sold 3 copies of it. I spent 3 months working on it, so yeah. But from then on, I took an upfront fee on there. And ideally, I tried to get commission, royalties on that. But the royalties typically in copywriting only come when you're more experienced. It was just a total fluke. I got them to start with. So yeah, I started off, I think my next sales page, I charged like $2,000 up front. Then I went to kind of 3,000. Then I think I jumped to 6,000. And then over the years, it's like 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, 25,000, 30,000. And now, it's $35,000 upfront payment if you want to hire me to write your sales page. And ideally, I also want a percentage of your sales.
Right. Gotcha. So I did want to ask you, you mentioned earlier that anyone who says 50% sales is insane. Well, can you comment more on that? Is that like a red flag? Why is that a red flag? And
well, okay, let's think you're selling something you've made.
Yeah.
Again, the chances are the business, if it's like an e-com store, their margins might only be 5% profit. So they're not going to give you 50% of anything. It's just too much to give.
Right.
And plus, as well as that, my client, he even handles all the PayPal fees and that type of thing. So I actually took more than that. I took more than he did on that because I think he was still fairly new and didn't really know what he was doing. But yeah, the industry standard, if you go to the big publishers now, you're looking 3% to maybe 15% at the absolute top end of that. You see, it's one of those odd things I see on Twitter, people posting, you get 20%, 25% royalties.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know what markets you're operating in. If you're telling me you're in an e-com market getting paid that, you're not. And it's not the industry standard by a long way. That would be incredibly high.
So that's something to keep in mind because, in the future, I might dabble with those royalties as well. So 3 to 5% is the safe part.
Yeah, anything on there. But you're always looking to haggle and get as much as you can. And again, if a client's selling an info product, then their margins are close to, it's 100% profit close to, because what have you got? You put it on somewhere, maybe upload it to Amazon S3, their storage system, and it costs nothing. So yeah, you can get higher there, but yeah, don't go in with expectations that you're going to get some huge percentage. Most of the time, those royalty payments mount up to be a lot because a lot of people are buying.
Yeah. Gotcha. So just to clarify again, you used to just do you do sales page and video sales letter, but you spend you mentioned you spend 3 months sometimes. How does your timeline look like normally? So how much market research, how much the actual writing, how much the editing, and how does that look like?
Well, now I kind of try to get a sales page out in 1 week if I know the market, 2 weeks if I don't. It's
okay.
Again, it might be longer depending on the deadline I've got with the client and how well I know things, but it's normally 1 week, 2 weeks, something like that. And then I'll spend a few days doing research. And again, exactly how long, it depends. It's like all the points we covered earlier when I was boring people with that. Plus, there's a lot more I need to get. Then when I've kind of got those, then I can start writing on there. Right. And then the writing process, again, another couple of days on there, as I typically go through it in stages. So I'll outline the copy first, and then I'll go through it and flesh it out in a series of passes. And then I'll leave it for a day and then come back and do the editing. And again, like writing, I'll do the editing in a series of passes, each time looking for a specific element on there. So I'll go through it looking to make it more specific. Then I'll go through it looking to add more proof. Then I might go through it looking to make it simpler. Then go through it looking to see what I can cut. Then go through it looking to see how I can strengthen the nouns. Then go through it looking to see how I can strengthen the verbs, and so on.
Oh, interesting. So it's like every editing session that you have actually is a different you don't edit the whole thing. You have like simpler, clarity, things like that.
Yeah, because you've got to think all these elements that you think about when you're editing your copy. I don't think you can do them all at once, or at least I can't. Because, maybe if you'd wrote an email, then it's easy. But if you've got, say, something that's multiple pages long, I don't think it's possible to keep all these things in your head, even with a checklist, and look at them all at the same time. It's far easier just to go through it and look at one specific aspect at a time. For example, the very first one is always, does it make sense? And that might sound a bit dumb, but the amount of copy I read from people where it doesn't make sense and you're scratching your head. And as well as that, it's easy when you're writing to get lost. So I'll always, just go through and just focus on that. And then when I know it makes sense, I'll go through it again. What can I cut? Because again, us writers, we always tend to overwrite. So there's often, words, sentences, even paragraphs that can just whoosh, you can just delete them on there. So, so you're going through it in each pass looking for a specific thing.
That's beautiful. I should apply that. I'm curious, do you approach like different types of copy in different ways? So like sales pages, emails, or like other types?
No, it's generally the same process. For something like an email, then it's maybe not as rigorous as that, but the process is still the same. It's research, writing, editing in there. And again, for emails, I'll typically edit a bit looser because I think you want emails to feel a bit more conversational, even personal, more casual. Like I'm just jotting you a quick note. So I won't polish out every word necessarily like I might do if it was a sales page. If there's the odd typo or error, or if I'm looking at something thinking I'm not sure that's the right way to phrase it, on a sales page I might go back and reword it. On the email, it's good enough.
Have you had clients with email, or do you primarily do sales pages?
Yeah, I've written daily emails for clients before. I've written emails, but my preference is always for sales pages, simply because, they're what got me into it. Like I said, they were the adverts I was fascinated with.
Right.
Plus, on a more mercenary level, they're where the big money is. So,
okay,
right.
So how did that? So right now I am trying to improve my email game. So I'm curious, how did you do email copywriting? Did you do it for a person, or did you do it for a company under a company's name?
Originally it was for a person. Again, it was for my second client where I wrote the letter and he paid me the 50% of royalties. Because of that, he said, hey, he had other businesses and was doing other things. So he said, do you want to write my emails for me? I said, he offered me, I think, 25% of any money making off the email if you write an email a day. And I thought, well, I don't know anything about writing emails, really. Yes. Yeah. But I like that 20% of the money. So I started to write emails for him. And it's quite good doing the emails every day because it forces you to write. You can't have a lazy day on there. You've got to get up, write the email, send him the email. And but generally now I'm writing emails more to kind of support the sales pages than I am as just, as purely an email project. But, as with anything, if the price is right, I'll do it.
Gotcha. Do you have any tips on how to get a voice? Because it's different when you're writing for someone. Because I feel like, when you're doing sales page, you can be really objective because you're really it's a sales page. But when it's an email, as you mentioned, it's more conversational and from a person himself. So do you have a way of making sure that you capture because I feel like that's more ghostwriting, you know what I mean, than copywriting?
It is, yeah. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
kind of why I've not really liked the term ghostwriting. Is it's become popular over the last year or so because it doesn't
Right.
really mean anything. It's like most copywriters are ghostwriters
I
essentially
see.
because we're always writing on behalf of a client,
Hmm.
whereas yeah, it's whereas they typically really just mean social media managers. That is just a glorified term, a bit of a gimmick on there,
Right.
really. So yeah, then for uh, coming up with the client's voice, what you're really wanting to do is just chat with them, just like this. I would start to
Yeah.
talk with the person, see what they're like on there, and get to know their personality a bit, get to see how they talk on there, and then you want to ask them for any copy or content that they like. So,
Hmm.
what type of thing they like, what writers, what marketers do they like, who do they like to read? You want to know that type of thing. And then on the flip side, you also want to know what writers and marketers they don't want to sound like. Because the
Hmm.
last thing you want to do is write something that you think's brilliant and they take a glance at it and it immediately turns them off just because of how you've written it. And
Yeah.
then similarly, you want to ask, are there any words or phrases you want them to avoid? You want to stay away from? For example, I worked with a client a couple of weeks ago, and he had some very specific things he wanted to avoid. And if I didn't know that, they would have gone in the copy, and you then got a problem with your client on there.
Right.
So, yeah, you want to know those things. You also want to ask them if they've written anything. Ask them for their best work. 3
Hmm.
pieces, 5 pieces of their best work. And then you can read through that and you can start to see, what words and phrases do they use? How are they writing like that? What tone are they using? Are they more jokey? Are they more serious? And also, you can look at the cadence of the writing. And the cadence is just a fancy way of saying things like, how long and short are the sentences? Like, how do they use the
Right.
punctuation? Like that, Are they very punchy and short? Or do they go on and on in long sentences that never seem like they're ending and you just wish they'd shut up? And then, as well as that, of course, once you've written something, you can ask them for their feedback. Not, as in normal feedback, as in is this good or not? Ask them, does this sound like something you'd write? And then they will typically help you. They might say, oh, I'd never say that, or I might phrase it like this. And then again, if that's a long-term client, it won't take you long, and you'll speak as if people won't be able to differentiate between whether it's them writing or you writing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I'd do that.
Beautiful. So this is something that I did want to ask. I didn't get to ask it in our last conversation. Do you have like comments on AI and writing, like using AI?
Yes and no. Of course, I can give you a comment, but I've never used it for writing yet.
Right.
Not at all. All I've used AI for, I've generated the odd picture I've put on my Twitter feed, and I asked it to come up with a name for a wooden giraffe I gave to my nephew. Jerry the giraffe, by the way, was what we came up with together, as I thought it was going in the wrong direction. So, yeah, I think AI is an incredibly powerful tool. I think it's only going to get more powerful, but at the moment, it's not suitable for what I do, at least, because I know a lot of people are like using it to do the research with, give me 10 pain points of this or whatever. But the trouble with that is you don't get the texture of the market. You don't really feel what's behind it. You just literally got to load a bunch of data points and it comes off as hollow. So I don't like doing it for that. And then if you get it to do the actual writing for you, again, it's never quite right again. So you're having to go through, edit it, reword it. And I think I'd just write it in the first place. It's what I do. It's easier. So yeah, I think AI is important. It's only going to get more important. But for me, at least, it's not quite at the level where I can use it professionally. And
Right. But
plus,
at some time, yeah, go ahead.
plus, if you're a beginner, then definitely stay away from it because you don't want it to be a crutch. You don't want it to slow down
Yeah.
your development. So instead of learning to write benefits and what a good benefit is and how to do it properly, you're just getting this AI to do it for you. It's like, think back to school. You weren't instantly given a calculator, were you? It was all, you had to learn your times table. You had to learn the basics of maths. And then when you knew it, you could use the calculator. And that's kind of how I'd want people to approach AI in their copy. So do it manually first. And then when you know the processes, know how to do it. And then if it will benefit you, then you can bring the AI in to do some of that legwork for you.
Gotcha. That's a good point. Speaking of beginners, I did want to ask you, did you work with multiple clients as a beginner or now? And would you recommend like beginners to, because a lot of ghostwriters kind of like look for more clients for more income. Would you recommend that, or do you like work with one?
Again, it's going to depend on your approach and your business model. Because again, some of these people are maybe charging $1,000 a month, and like if
Yeah.
you're living in America or here in the UK, that's not enough to live on. You're going to need 5, 6, maybe more clients every month to make ends meet. But for me, I generally focused on the higher ticket. Like I said, I was being paid $3, $4, $5, $6,000 for a sales page, so I've only ever taken on one client at a time. And
Right.
like, it's like I've recently started offering coaching, and that's completely thrown my whole system out because all of a sudden, instead of working with one client at a time, I've now got 3 calls in a day. And I'm like, oh, wait, well, how do I organize this? So yeah, I've very much only been used to working with one client at a time. And
Right.
if you can afford it, that is the path I'd recommend because it means I'm only ever focusing on one thing. It's like all that research we talked about, it's just one client. Whereas imagine if all those points, I was trying to juggle those for 5 people at the same time.
Yeah.
Even if I'm organised and I've got them all in separate documents, it's all inside my mind is going to be complete chaos. It's who am I writing for? What, all that. I mean, again, there's probably people who are smarter than me who could do this, but for a dumb like me, it's like no chance at all.
Yeah, and that's something that you talked about. I wanted to touch on as well, like dumb, because you talk about how you're a copy idiot, and like how you kind of use templates rather than the copy thinking, starting from scratch. Would you like to expound on that? Yeah.
You're trying to cause trouble here in the copywriting side.
No, I just like the idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's like I said, I've been a professional athlete, and that when you're a professional athlete, it's very simple. Your coach says do this, so you do that. It's like down, do 20 push-ups. Do 20 push-ups, throw 20 jabs and crosses. I throw 20 jabs and crosses. But, keep your hands here, elbows tucked in, thumbs on the cheek, hands, and you just do what you're told. And it worked for me. And I took the same approach to copy. And so, it's like I first learned from Dan Kennedy, and he said, do all these things. And I just did all those things, and they worked. He said, do this, and you'll make money. I did that, and I'll make money. But it seems like a lot of people online, they want to think. They want to use the brain, but you don't need to. You're overcomplicating things, especially to start with, because you've got people who've been doing this for decades, and they just say, do A, B, C. All you have to do is go out and do A, B, C. But yeah, people want to fight against you. Again, especially you see it on social media. I'll post something that I think is obvious and basic, and then you get a bunch of complete beginners saying, well, no, what about this? No, just do what I told you. You're overthinking it. You don't need to be a thinker. Just, follow my CopyMoron approach. Just do what the experts tell you. And that's all I need to do. It's like, we know the best way to structure a sales page. We know how to structure an email. So just do it. And I'm not saying you need to stick with that all the time. I'm not saying you need to rigidly follow these things. But when you're starting out, we know what works. Just do it. And you'll find out what works better for you and your clients as time goes on. But to start with, don't overcomplicate it. Just find a teacher and do what he says. And Bob's your uncle, hopefully.
All right. So speaking of teachers, do you have any like book recommendations for beginner copywriters?
Again, I think with copywriting as well, anything like this, you want to look for people you resonate with. I think that's important. It's not just people who are good and not just even just people who can teach, but who do you resonate with? Because, there are several people in the community who I think are amazing copywriters, but I don't resonate with them at all as a person. I couldn't learn from them at all just because of their personality. And again, you're not getting me to name anyone here. I'm not causing a fist fight in anybody. But yeah, and simply no doubt there's people who listen to me or read my content and think, so even though I'm the best copywriting account on Twitter and I'm amazing, there are people who won't vibe with me. So, I mean, the two kind of things I normally recommend for beginners are the books, The Ultimate Sales Letter by Dan Kennedy, because he does an amazing job of breaking down the absolute basics of the craft. So he talks about research, he talks about benefit writing, he talks about exactly what you need to know.
Yeah.
And then the next book I recommend people read is The Adweek Copywriting Handbook by Joe Sugarman. And that's great because it builds on what Dan taught. It's a little more advanced.
Yeah.
And then when you've got those, you should have a pretty good foundation and understanding of the art. And so from there, you can pick and choose who you learn from. Like I said, different people will learn best from different people.
Yeah. The Ultimate Sales Letter, when I started like reading that, because you recommended it. I got the idea of what you mentioned, like the CopyMoron, because like he just literally dumbed it down. It's like, just do this step 1, step 2, and it's just easy to follow.
Yeah, that's, I think, like the book is like, what, 27 steps or something like that to write your copy.
Yeah.
And so, just follow it. Don't think, again, don't think, oh, I know better than this. In fact, if you do think that, stop yourself for a second and think, hang on, Dan Kennedy's, I think he's worth about $45 million US. He's done this for several decades. You, on the other hand, have just picked up a book. Well, I'm not convinced you know better than him.
That's funny. All right, so I like to ask my podcast guest this: like, if there was one question that you wish that I asked, what would it have been, and how would you have answered it?
Oh man, well, it's interesting. It might have been asking me how to get more specific with my writing, simply because I thought of an example this morning when I was in the shower, and you've not asked me about it. So I've written it down here, and we've gone in a completely different direction. And you force me to think. I'm the idiot. I write everything down, so I know what to say. I can sound smart to people simply because I prepare a little bit in advance.
All right. So what is it? How can you write specific?
I'm not going to tell you now. No, get in there, right? Or specificity. It's a powerful selling tool by itself, and I think it's something a lot of copywriters skip. For example, whenever I look at people's copy, probably my most common feedback point is get more specific. And I say it so much, eventually I forget how to pronounce it, because let's face it, it's an awkward word, specificity and specific. I'm going to trip over myself at some point. And as well, I think a lot of people misunderstand it a bit. They often think specific, it's just about kind of adding numbers into something. Like instead of lose weight, lose 7 pounds in 7 days. And that is getting more specific, but we can go deeper than that, because what specificity is really about is it's really about making your writing come to life. It's making it more visual, so it becomes more real. Because the more real it becomes, and the more believable it is. And the more believable it is, well, the more likely your reader is to believe you and hopefully buy what you're selling on there. Yeah. So it's great to be specific, and the more specific you can be, almost always the better. And we've got what I kind of like to think of as the 4 levels of specificity. The first level of specificity is just in general. It's no specificity. For example, I might say John was cold. Now, that's just a very simple statement. There's no real detail or specifics in there. Yeah. And in fact, even before we get on to specifics, actually, we can look at a quick tip. I've said John was cold. Now, that's was. Yeah. Was is a weak word. In fact, the whole of the verb family, to be, is a weak verb. And a quick and easy way to punch up your writing is to remove it. See if you can remove the verb to be from your writing. Now, that's a great exercise for any newer copywriters watching this. Go through all of your writing and see if you can remove the verb to be. And most of the time, you'll be able to get rid of it, and it'll make your writing stronger. So in this case, instead of saying John was cold, John felt cold. It's simple change, better writing. But so get back to specificity. That's what we're talking about. So John was cold, John felt cold. Not very specific. So the first thing is simply to get specific, add a more specific thing. You might say, John's weather app said it was 2 degrees. Now, we've got specific. We know it's 2 degrees out, so we know it's cold. That's, again, specific. But we can go another level deeper. We can use a concept known as show, don't tell. Because in both of those, John felt cold and John's weather app said 2 degrees. I was telling you it was cold. But to help bring it to life, I can show it to you. I can create a little mental image in your mind. And I could do this, John could see his breath in the cold night air. Now, straight away, you see, I've created that mental image. It's a little bit better. It's quite a bit better on there. And that's kind of the 3rd level of that. And then we can go even further. We can take it to the 4th level of specificity. And we can start to include what's known as sensory language. And sensory language is where you include as many senses as possible. So, for example, we've got sight, we've got sound, we've got smell, we've got touch, and there'll be others I'm forgetting, of course. So if I add those into what I've just said. So we can go to, John could see his breath in the cold night air and rubbed his hands together, wishing he'd remembered his gloves. And now, you see, I've just added in that extra sensory bit of touch, and suddenly I've created a mini movie in your mind. It's gone from John was cold to John could see his breath in the cold night air and rubbed his hands together, wishing he'd remembered his gloves. You see, that last bit almost sounds like professional writing. It almost sounds proper on there.
Yeah.
And it creates
Sounds
that
like a
image
novel.
inside your client's mind, inside the reader's mind. You've brought it to life for them. And now you don't need to go to that level in every single point you're going to make in your copy, or you're going to end up with a novel and some saga on there, which isn't what we're aiming for.
Yeah.
But for any point that's important in what you're selling, and then you do want to go down that level of specificity, and the more important it is, the more specific you want to get. So let's say being cold didn't really matter to the story. Then you might just say, John felt cold, or, it was 2 degrees out, he put on a thick coat, just something minor. But then let's say it is important. Maybe you're selling like a coat that keeps you warm, or some fancy heated gloves. Then you want to go into more detail because the cold is an important element. So then you would do he could see his breath in the cold night air and rubbed his hands together, wishing he'd remembered his gloves. And this, I'm going to go off on another kind of tangent now, sorry. This also...
No, it's good.
Why you want to be reading, and you want to be reading fiction. Because it's like I said, that example I gave there, if I'd never read any fiction, never read any books, I probably wouldn't know how to write that. Or I'd be writing it from kind of a copywriting standpoint rather than a proper fiction writer's standpoint. So again, you always want to be reading good fiction to learn how to write better. Because again, you've got a lot of people who play down the writing skill of copywriting. Copywriting's not writing. Okay, let's take the writing away from copywriting, and now you've got a blank page. You're not selling much with a blank page. So writing is an essential skill and shouldn't be overlooked.
Gotcha. So specificity, I said it right. When there's important aspects of the copy, just make it more specific.
That's it. The more important is the more specific you want to get with it. And if you're not sure, then get more specific anyway, because you almost can't get too specific. Like I said, when I look at newer copywriters' work, my main point is almost always get more specific. I've never said get less specific with anything. And plus, when you're starting out, it's good practice, And in fact, if somebody wanted an exercise to do, they could just focus on that, getting more specific with anything and everything they write.
Right. Gotcha. So to anyone who wants more help with copywriting, where can they find you, Andrew? And do you have anything that you're going to launch or anything you want to plug?
At the moment, I'm just on Twitter. Everyone calls it Twitter. It's like X now. You can find me there under the username Andrew Wright Copy on there. And I do offer coaching, one-on-one coaching. And I'm also the copywriting coach for Francis Nayan's community. He's just changed the name of the community, and being a professional, my mind has gone blank as to what it's actually called. So you're going to give me a second to go to the server here and just check the name of this. Email Freedom, that's it. It used to be called the Nomadic Copywriter, and now he's called it Email Freedom. So I'm the copywriting coach there as well, and that's a great way to get access to me at a far more reasonable price than if you were to pay for one-on-one coaching.
All right. I appreciate you hopping in, Andrew. I know you have multiple clients and you have multiple calls at the moment. So I appreciate you putting me inside that calendar of yours.
Oh, no. I try to keep my calendar as empty as possible. I see those people with the ridiculous things and every day's full. I'm like, whoa, not a chance. If I have to do more than one thing a day, I don't like it. So,
All right. Awesome. Thank you for hopping in, Andrew. You're a copywriting legend, so it's such an honor to talk with you. I'll see you around in X.
Yeah, most welcome, Nathaneal. Thanks for hosting me. Been a great chat. See you later.
See ya.